Traffic Infringement Agency temporarily lifting the order blocking drivers from renewing their license discs and cards. And about time is what I say. Let's hear what Outer Executive Director, Advocate Stephanie Fick, has to say about this issue. And if they are temporarily lifting this order now, how soon will they, put it back in place, so that we've got to scurry around and see that we get our road issues, our driver's licenses, discs, etc., in order. Very good morning to you, Stephanie Fick. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everybody.
So we're now sitting with this situation. How much leeway do we have around this lifting of the order?
So RTIA didn't give us, an indication of how long. What they did say is that they're going to do an investigation, and the investigation relates to a number of complaints that we received, and especially a company like Fines for You, who deals with fines on behalf of many clients. And the main complaint was that a lot of old fines, fines that people didn't even know about, and we're talking about old 2019 fines, that all of a sudden appeared as enforcement orders. And the worry is you can only have an enforcement order if you followed a very strict procedure. And we are of the view you didn't. So RTIA said, okay, we will investigate this to see if there's a problem on our side. And in the meantime, all those people that, were surprised by enforcement orders may now renew their licenses without, being refused because of an enforcement order.
So you're an advocate and you obviously know all of these things regarding the legal issues. Is there a period, what do they call it, what's it, prescription period, regarding these type of legal issues, where if a file, if a fine hasn't been paid within a 5-year period, whether you were aware of it or not, that it falls away automatically? Shouldn't that some sort of prescription be in place regarding road traffic fines as well?
This specifically R2. So because there's still 2 systems in play. In fact, there's 3 systems in play. So I don't want to confuse people, because you say I'm an advocate. The legislation is not written, and it's, even for me, extremely confusing at
Okay.
most of the times. But you have 3 systems. So you have the old R2 system that is still in place, but only Joburg and Tshwane. Then you have the new R2 system that they want to roll out nationwide in July, but we can park that for a moment because that's in the future. And then you have the rest of the country that is still on the old system, which, it doesn't speak to R2. It is normal fines that you get. You can either pay it or you can go to court, and there's a whole criminal process unfolding there. But to come back to R2 specifically, again, only in Joburg and Tshwane, you get an infringement notice. Now, the legislation is quite clear. You need to get an infringement notice within 40 days of committing the offense. Thereafter, they have to, if you haven't, when you get your infringement notice, 32 days for you to apply your mind. Do you want to pay it and get a discount? Do you want to make a representations? Do you want to pay it in installments, etc., etc.? Now, if you do not do something within those 32 days, they have to send you a courtesy letter saying, motorist, there's a fine on your name. You haven't, dealt with the fine. You still have a few choices. Please, tell us what you want to do. Again, 32 days. So after 64 days, if nothing happens and you didn't do anything, only then can they, convert it into an enforcement order. Now, you asked me whether fines, whether there's an expiry. And unfortunately, fines can remain on your name. But after, a certain period of time, they can't do anything with it. They can't block you from renewing your license. They can't all of a sudden send you a courtesy letter, because in terms of their own legislation, there are time periods. So we are fighting hard with RTIA. They are of the opinion that they can leave those fines there. What they're going to do with it, no one knows, because I think they still hope that people will pay it. And when people are confronted at a licensing department saying, listen, you can't renew your license because you have outstanding fines, they hope people will pay. Now, that's unlawful. They can't do that. But, some people will pay, and that's why they keep it. The prescription per se is not applicable on fines, but in terms of the R2 legislation that, quite frankly, they wrote and invented, there's strict timelines, and if you do not abide by those, they can't do anything with it. So it's not about whether there's prescription or not. It is they are unable to do anything with fines that if they haven't followed the process.
And what are those guidelines, the time frame? I'm just thinking I've been so foolish in the past. I always paid my fines on the dot. And now if you tell me what those timelines are, I can also conveniently forget about those. That's very naughty of me to make such a proclamation on air. But anyway, be that as it may, what does that time frame look like?
So I think, you saying you don't pay your fines. I think what
I
we need to
do. I'm saying I
yeah.
do pay them. Yeah.
Yeah. I consider people to generally be law-abiding citizens. And if you get a fine, you will pay it. Because remember, if you get your fine within those 32 days, you can get a discount. So generally, I think people, if they, and R2, let me interrupt myself, is only minor offenses. We are not talking about hardcore criminal activity here. It is minor offenses that people will pay their fines. But what is unfair is if you didn't get your fine, so in other words, it didn't reach you via registered post, you didn't get your courtesy letter, which is an obligation in terms of their legislation, and then all of a sudden when you go to a licensing authority, you have an enforcement order on your name for a fine you got in 2019. They didn't follow that is totally unreasonable in my view. So when you get a fine, in terms of R2, look at the fine, make sure that you committed the offense. And if you did, you have a choice, and then I think normally people will pay it. But if you didn't get your fine, didn't get a courtesy letter, and then to get an enforcement order is also not right. They say that you must then approach them, and it boils down to a representation. You can tell them, listen, can't I pay it, or whatever the case may be, and then that enforcement order will be revoked. But it will cost you money. And if it's not your fault, that is also not fair towards motorists. The problem will come in once the system is rolled out nationwide and we have demerit points, is that you will sit with a demerit point. And the risk of you getting a demerit point for an offense you didn't commit is a real problem. And if you, for example, didn't get a fine, enforcement order, demerit point system for something you didn't know about, that to me is literally unconstitutional. That's not a democratic value that is fair to motorists.
Okay, my final question then. We've heard a lot about this demerit system, South Africa being the country that we are. I kind of wonder how this demerit system is going to work. Will it be efficient enough? Will we care enough to follow through? Would they truly revoke our licenses? Who is going to police all of that regarding, you being stopped, and, how and where is the demerit points going to reflect on your license or your disc? It just sounds so laborious to me. I know it works in the UK and the States, but is it going to be workable here? And finally, what is an enforcement order?
So your questions are so valid, and we've been asking it ever since this new R2 Amendment Act was opened for comments. It was really our problem that, although similar systems may work in other countries, you need to make sure that your legislation is fit for purpose. In other words, will it work in South Africa with our people? and with our systems. I have to say, though, that our system, specifically R2, the legislation demerit point system, is very unique. Although there are similar systems in Australia and so forth, our system is extremely unique. It's not exactly the same as other systems. And then you have to take into account corruption. We haven't dealt with corruption.
And
Yeah,
the taxi industry, please God, the taxi industry.
the taxi industry. But how do you solve? So, to come back to all the problems is the object of or the reason for the RT legislation in their minds are to curb road deaths, to do something about you know law-abiding motorists, to create people or want people to be law-abiding citizens. How do you really instill that? And that's law enforcement. That is actually, catching people. And do we have enough law enforcement agencies to actually make sure that R2 is abided by, etc.? And that goes for, not just R2. R2 is just the system. The offenses remain out there. R2 is just the way you enforce your infringements and your fines and all of that. But if you don't have enough people, if you don't have people on the road to catch the drunk drivers, to make sure that, I can go on and on, because with drunk drivers, how long does it take for that, for the forensics to be done? I know how many drunk driver cases get thrown out because the blood alcohol, whatever, is not done. So there's many other problems. And then there's administrative problems. If we are sitting already with allegations that RTIA, whose sole purpose is to make sure that the R2 legislation is followed, if they don't do that, what hope do we have that it will work perfectly when it's rolled out nationwide? Enforcement order. In that process, very laborious process, I like that word, very cumbersome process, and it makes people just say, I'll just pay my fines. I think that's what they hope for is, I don't know what Stefani is talking about this morning. It sounds to me very complicated. I will just pay my fines, which is fine if you're guilty. But, if you're not, you need to have the opportunity to say why you're not guilty, because not is also a problem. That is the system where your information is accumulated. And believe me, happened to me, enforcement order against my name for a motorcycle that I do not own. So it's a duplicate number plate. Enforcement order just means that you ignored your infringement notice that was sent to you. You ignored the courtesy letter. In other words, you didn't pay your fine, and therefore they convert it into an enforcement order, which means you cannot renew licenses.
Ooh. Okay. Steph, we're going to leave it there. Thank you, as always, unpacking it so succinctly, and always being around to help us through all of this, oh goodness me, all this jargon. So you guys at Out are doing an amazing job. I've been speaking also on a regular basis with Dr. Ferial Adam, it is, regarding the water issue. Also, like you, on top of her game. Always a pleasure chatting with you guys. Keep up the amazing work, and God bless.
Thank you so much. God bless you too. And everybody out there, if we stand together, we are the difference we want to see.
Absolutely. Go well. God bless. It is exactly 9:48. News and Views wrapping up this morning with our final interview of the day, Women in Media. And that, of course, is Gishma Johnson, co-founder, producer, and presenter at IFM.